Welcome to Masters of Growth for Plaintiff Law Firms. This is where we sit down and talk to industry leaders to bring you lessons, stories, and insights that will help you grow your revenue, margins, and the happiness that you have at work. Carson, such a pleasure to be chatting with you today. I think the audience and listeners of this have a lot to learn from you. Maybe just start by sharing a little bit of your background and also about LegaFi and top class action.
Yeah, absolutely, Julian. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the conversation and I'm looking forward to the podcast. So my background has historically been, as of recent, in legal intake and in conversion on the law firm side, mainly plaintiff law. And that recently changed last year when I came onto the Top Class Actions team. Top Class Actions is the world's largest place for class action news, settlements, and any information you need to know about what's going on in the world of class actions, as well as what you might be eligible for. And then LegaFi was born out of Top Class Actions. So LegaFi is an Arizona ABS law firm. Arizona ABS law firms allow for non-lawyer ownership of law firms. LegaFi is primarily in plaintiff law, in mass torts, class actions, and now we're dabbling in personal injury.
That's super cool. And there are a lot of folks that kind of look at class action and mass torts, but don't really know how to think about it or how to get involved. How should law firms think about mass torts and using that to help grow their business?
Yeah, absolutely. Mass torts and class actions are really interesting things because they're often hiding in plain sight for a lot of plaintiff law firms. Plaintiff law firms see individuals come through all the time with different problems, depending on what your practice area is. And a lot of times they have other stuff going on that you may not easily recognize, right? So if it's a personal injury practice, they may have gotten into a car accident, but that doesn't mean that they're not going through treatment as a result of an injury that they got from a bad product or a bad drug or any of these things. And so the way I look at mass torts and class actions for a lot of these smaller or firms that don't play in the space, they have the opportunity to both help the individuals that they're representing on other matters, but also monetize those cases in another way, right? You can get involved without having to try the cases or without having to get really into the depths of understanding. Getting a high level understanding about what's out there right now, what settlements are going on and what's being tried and where it stands can help you identify based on your client's needs, what they might have a chance at getting involved in. And so that's how I think the biggest opportunity that lawyers are missing out on in the mass and class space is they could take clients that they already have without doing any more marketing and reach out to them and say, hey, we saw this, we noticed this, we think you might be eligible for this. Is this something you want to talk about? And a no pressure conversation can get them involved in additional compensation.
Interesting. So it's just if I'm a small plaintiff firm and I've got a stable of clients and contacts that I've interacted with over the years, as long as I know about what cases are going on, even if I'm not a litigation attorney trying those cases, if I know that maybe there's 10 people in my contact list that I've worked with in the past or currently working with that might have been a victim in one of those cases, I can take them and then attach them to that case, working with some other partners. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Email marketing works great for that. If you have a good newsletter cadence with your firm and following up with your clients, whether it's happy birthday and happy new year or a more active one with, hey, here's what's going on in my world, that's a great place to market for that. And exactly, keeping things on your radar, saying, okay, I know this is going on right now. Maybe my clients can get involved in this and doing it that way, as well as active clients. We're seeing more and more personal injury firms add actual questions about these torts in their personal injury intake and in other things that they're doing throughout their course of action for active clients that are allowing them to notice and to get them into dockets there. Mainly, the biggest hurdle that exists is not getting the clients, but finding co-counsel that you resonate with and that you want to work with and that you want to attach your clients to their docket for representation. You have to trust, obviously, the other counsel to get that done for you and take care of your clients. And so building those relationships, there's a lot of big firms out there that are great at what they do, but just getting those things set up beforehand so that you're not shuffling around as the cases come across your desk.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And switching gears a little bit, if we think about one of the things that you've brought up offline with me in the past is around some of the work that I think LegaFi does mostly, and Top Class Action might be doing some of this as well, where you're essentially attracting plaintiffs and then partnering with co-counsel around the country, different firms around the country that are best suited to help that particular client in that particular situation. I've talked to a lot of plaintiff firms that have this sort of aversion to lead gen or someone else finding a lead for them. And obviously a lot of firms do it. A lot of firms don't. I'm just curious, how should firms think about that? Like, how should you think about evaluating lead gen partnerships, and how do you make the most of those leads? Maybe we can double click on intake after that.
Yeah, definitely. Lead gen is an interesting space right now because historically what we've seen is as the evolution of the internet has occurred, attorneys have gotten involved and spent a lot of money in different places in advertising, and the internet is no different to that. And the biggest challenge that we see with the internet is it's not like an inbound phone call from a radio ad or a billboard or anything like that. A lot of these come through as forms. A lot of them could be from bad actors and lead aggregators. And that's where it can be a dangerous place for attorneys that haven't necessarily vetted who they're getting leads from. And so while the internet is probably now definitely the number one place to find new clients for any type of law firm, the way that you have to do it is you have to have a little bit more caution than what you're getting from a historical or traditional media source. And there's ways that we're seeing a lot of firms focus on making sure that they've got identity verification, making sure that they've got submission verification, things like that, making sure that they're not making outbound calls, sending texts, things like that to clients that didn't actually submit their information, that were just gathered by a lead aggregator. And that's really the biggest thing that I preach is we saw, especially in the mass and class space with some of these big torts, Camp Lejeune being one of them, there were people out there generating leads using aggregation and using different methods of scraping and getting data that people did not submit forms on. And they ended up getting in a lot of trouble for it as a result, because there's huge crackdowns in TCPA and other regulations now where if there's not that one-to-one consent that's going on, you can have a really tough time fighting that battle in court. And unfortunately, what normally is a settlement for a different type of small business or lead gen service, as soon as they hear the word law firm, those settlements go up exponentially in value. The assumption is that because you're a lawyer, you're supposed to know the rules, and the people you have working for you are supposed to know the rules. And as a result, we're seeing higher and higher settlements. And a lot of times the firms may have not known that this was how their leads are being generated. So exclusive and one-to-one leads are the best way to focus on your lead generation online.
Yeah. What do you mean by exclusive and one-to-one leads?
Yeah, totally. So exclusive leads, there are leads out there that are shared, and there are leads out there that have different layers of complexity to them, right? They may have submitted their information to multiple places, things like that. And so there's no better internet lead than them having come directly to your website and submitting a form that you can track, right? So you can do this through LSAs, Google Ads, things like that. But having that direct opt-in, being able to track where they came from, whether that's you or another firm generating that lead, as long as you have that paper trail of getting their information, that's how you stay out of trouble the best way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Versus, one lead filling out one form maybe, and then being passed to 100 different attorneys, right, and all of a sudden getting 100 different phone calls.
And everybody's fighting over it. Now they changed their phone number. They don't want an attorney anymore. Right. Exactly. Or it's from 3 years ago and they already figured it out or got settled up, and they're getting calls again out of the blue.
It's just old. Yeah. There are some bad actors in lead gen that just try to monetize the same phone number and email multiple times.
For sure.
Real estate comes to mind.
Oh, yeah. Real estate and home services are very, very interesting places for that. Yeah.
Totally. So I guess extending on that. So let's say as a firm, you have a relationship with an entity. Maybe it's you guys, maybe it's a marketing firm, maybe it's another law firm that has, really good marketing, whatever it might be. You've established some partnerships with some firms that are generating leads for you. It's exclusive. It is one-to-one. How do you not waste money on those leads? If you're spending money or you're getting referrals, you just want to make the most leads coming in. Like you talked at the top of this conversation about your background in intake. Like, how do you make sure you're converting the most amount of those leads possible?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few different ways you can go about it, but the top tier, most important thing that you have to focus on when you're doing intake and when you want to be one of the best at converting is making sure that you're reaching out to leads through every channel, right? More and more now we're seeing leads engaged through text message, less email, but still some on email, and then also phone outreach. And you can go about that a few different ways. There's a lot of really powerful platforms out there that will allow you to automatically send texts and emails as soon as the lead submitted. It'll alert your team to make an outbound phone call, things like that. But the biggest thing is in the digital world, people have access to hundreds of firms a lot of times at the exact same time. And if they submit on your website or they make an inbound call and they can't get connected with someone and they don't feel at least like their situation is being looked at and taken care of, they're going to bounce onto the next firm. And so a lot of times you can waste marketing dollars, right? They may have seen your TV ad or seen your ad online. They call you or they submit a form and they don't hear from you. They're going to the next attorney on the list on Google that they found. And now that attorney is reaping the benefit of your marketing dollars. And so what's most interesting about that is these systems that are built, a lot of times attorneys either have an intake person or have an ops person who they truly believe has everything handled. It's all good. And then things break along the way. And as if a form is broken or if an alert is broken or any of these things happen, we notice a lot that firms who thought they had good practices actually don't exist. And you'll get a web form submitted on the website. You can show them, hey, look, I submitted a form. And they're like, oh, well, you're supposed to get a text. So I didn't get a text. My team is supposed to call you. It's not even in their system. And so by auditing intakes and by making sure that you are on some sort of cadence to go through those processes of all the places that you absorb leads and what the experience is for your client, it'll help you have a better intake process. And there's a different methodologies to signing people up and getting them to sign a retainer, and whether that first call close is the best or whether a consultation is the best. The biggest thing that they need to feel like, and you and I talked about this earlier, is if the person answering the phone is not sales minded and not customer service minded, it's a really challenging thing to go on, because you answer the phone and say you've been in a car accident and they don't feel like they've been taken care of. Even if you did the right things and they don't feel like someone is on their side, they'll probably go on to the next firm. Going over all the things, hey, here are the next steps, setting expectations, moving through the whole process and making them feel like they're really taken care of is where you see the highest conversion rates on top of utilizing all this great technology that's out there today.
That makes a lot of sense. Auditing is interesting. What percentage of firms do you think audit their user experience from an intake perspective? And how frequently do you think those audits take place, like on average?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. The big firms, small firms all have different processes. And back when I was at lawyer.com, and LawyerLine is a really great call answering tool and follow up and intake. But when we would do the audits, you would have firms that they're spending $60 million a year in advertising and they have poor intake or they have broken processes. And then on the flip side of that, you'll have a really small shop that only does organic or only does local, and they've got all their processes locked in. And so through that audit process, just having a cadence of checking up is really important. A lot of firms don't do it. And if they do, it's like something that they don't have a cadence for. It'll come to mind, oh man, I should check what that web form does, or, oh, I should check it, make sure the platform's working. Huge shops a lot of times have internal technology, but those ones that are in the middle spending money on marketing and may not have it on a regular cadence, my recommendation, it is a little time consuming, is at least once a month you're going through and checking your web forms, checking all your endpoints, checking the communications tools to make sure that you're getting the value of the marketing dollars you're spending.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So once a month, basically do a UX, a user experience audit, to check that like all those things you've set up to happen are actually happening, whether that's an automated process or just a standard operating procedure where someone should be doing something based on certain things happening.
Yeah, exactly. And systems change and we pay attention to what's going on when there's big updates, but a lot of times there's not big updates and you can have issues. Last year there was, or I don't know, a couple of years ago, there was a Salesforce update where all the endpoints changed for a lot of LegaFi customers. And so people were, for the first 6 hours of the day, were like, where are all the leads? Man, it's a slow weekday. And all of a sudden, everyone started to realize on a rolling basis, oh, we got this minor little email a few days ago telling us that the endpoints were changing and we didn't update anything. And so it's things like that just being really on the ball helps make sure that your technology is working the way it should and that your team can be successful as possible.
Yeah. That's, on the one hand, it's funny. It's not funny because it costs people a lot of money, but just like the behemoth that is Salesforce and the degree to which we all rely on these integrations and endpoints.
Exactly.
Fascinating. So what do you think is the lowest hanging fruit from an intake perspective? There's a couple things you've mentioned already, which is response time, getting back to people quickly, having the right empathy and giving people confidence that you can help them in their situation. Also, obviously, auditing the entire process on a regular basis to make sure things haven't broken that you don't even know about. Maybe the answer is one of those. Maybe it's something else. But what do you think the most common mistakes are across the industry for broken intake? Where it's, if you just spend half a day, just go solve this one thing, at least you'll get a little bit of lift and you can work on the rest later.
Yeah, the most common issue that I see that results in marketing falling flat on its face is customers going or clients going to voicemail and ending up in voicemail inboxes and leaving a message. And then that's almost an immediate bounce, right? If you answer and you talk to them, or it gets forwarded to a call answering service and they talk to them and it's a good experience, that's one step in the puzzle. And then if you add that redundancy of technology, which you can get relatively inexpensively now, making sure they're getting a text message and an email just to feel like they're recognized. You submit an order at Home Depot, you get a text, you get an email, and then you get an alert in your app. And it should be almost the same experience as that, because that's what clients are used to now as they're coming through the funnel. And so if they call up your firm and they go to a voicemail and they don't hear back from someone until next Tuesday, they're probably already found another lawyer. And if they haven't, they're at least a little less confident in your ability just based on that initial experience that has nothing to do with your competence as a litigator or a lawyer in another sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. There's a lot of stats. I come from, as you and I've talked about, the SaaS and tech world, and I've built large sales teams, and we've looked at all these stats around best practices. And your point about someone answering the phone or being able to talk to someone, I might have the numbers incorrect, but off the top of my mind, I think it was first contact. If it takes longer than 5 minutes just to establish a contact, which you can solve just by an automated text, but if it takes longer than 5 minutes, there's an 80% drop in conversion rate, however you measure that conversion rate, whether it be your ability to qualify them or them converting to a customer. And then I believe there was something like 78% of customers across multiple different industries go with the first vendor that they talk to.
Yeah.
If you can talk to them in that first day, you're already way ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
How do you think about, because this is outside the scope, in my experience, of most marketers or lawyers or any kind of service professionals, is managing what is essentially like an inside sales team or call center, whether you're managing an external third-party answering service or you're hiring a team of people in-house. Like, how do you think people make that transition from, oh, I'm a marketer generating leads, or I'm a law firm and I try cases and I go get settlements, to all of a sudden, oh, I have to build this like people team to answer phone calls and start listening to the call recordings and then coach them? What's the best way to make that transition, do you think, or any tips or advice or thoughts on how to navigate that?
Yeah, definitely. It's not an easy transition. It's a very different mindset than running a solo shop or running a traditional format. And the biggest challenge that comes with that is, like you said, recognizing that first line team as an inside sales team and making sure that they have the skills to ask for retainers, ask for information, make people feel good, make people feel like they're taken care of, and not just answer the phone, take a message, hang up. And building that out is a very special skill set. What I would recommend is, as you get to scale and as you have both the monetary and mental bandwidth, to get some sort of ops person into your firm to manage that for you, so that you can focus on being your CEO and being your lead litigator, and let that person go through and manage the rest of it. And a lot of times what we see is people skimp out on intake, but it really hurts their firm as a whole. And they're loading dollars into marketing when a little bit of that could be allocated back into intake, and they're going to be way more effective at all the things they're doing. There's a lot of groups out there preaching this right now. I know at a lot of the big conferences, Fireproof is talking about hiring a COO and getting that second in command to say, hey, you shouldn't be running your intake team. You shouldn't be running your litigators, or you should be running your litigators and not the rest of it. And so that's the biggest piece of advice that I have is when you're going to dive in head first, just make sure that the intake team is not just bodies and that it's a quality group of people and a quality set of technology that are that first touch that your client has.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's a whole different beast, and it requires a different mental model to go think about that. Just circling back to follow on some of the lead gen questions we talked about, I'm just curious, if I'm a law firm trying to grow, you did mention a few things around that exclusive and one-to-one lead gen, but is there anything else? If I'm looking to grow my practice and I'm looking for more cases and I'm looking at different firms that can do lead gen in some capacity for me, are there any like obvious red flags to look for, obvious green flags that people should look for when evaluating different firms to partner with to get leads?
Yeah, definitely. So the first piece of advice answering the first part is if you're a firm that's a smaller size and you're looking to grow and scale fast and well, make sure you have the systems and processes in place before you do that. I've seen so many firms build an amazing docket and a large size firm, and then they're working backwards to get their automations and their intake and all these other things built. And it's really hard once you have cases in the funnel to do that. If you can do it while you're early on and you have a smaller docket and a smaller caseload, it does help you scale way more effectively. And as far as picking out lead generation partners and that side of things, the best thing is to just ask questions, understand where the leads come from, understand the details behind, hey, how is this person getting to me? Are they signing up for my website? Are they signing up through your website? Do you track that whole paper trail in case there's an issue? And then as soon as you have a more than a 5-minute conversation, you'll be able to tell whether or not they're generating the leads, they're going to your site. And if they're not, and they're generating the leads elsewhere, whether or not it's a true one-to-one lead, or if they're actually sending the leads to multiple attorneys or to multiple different places. There's, especially in the volume game, which is a lot of mass tort and class action, there has historically been a huge push for huge volumes of leads and big numbers and all these things. And we're starting to trend away from that after we've seen these opt-in issues where data is not the best and people are getting in trouble. And so the understanding where your leads come from and having that opt-in trail, there are great tools to track it, will save you in the long run. Yeah,
that makes sense. All good points. I guess we're coming up on time here, so I get two final questions. One, given everything about plaintiff firms and all the firms you've worked with and talked to over the years, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to them if they want to grow their business? And then follow-up question to that, what needs to be true in a plaintiff firm or in any law firm to know that they want to work with LegaFi or top class action? What can you provide them? How should they think, oh, this is my situation, maybe I should reach out to Carson or his team?
Yeah, definitely. The age-old tale about if you want to grow your small firm and make it a big firm is just going for it, making that decision to do it. And however you picture yourself and however you have your brand image and all these things, just go for it. There's so many people out there that you can talk to that started as one person shops and now they're at 50 or 60. They all say, I had no idea this is what I could be. Just one day I decided that I was going for it. And it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the absolute best out of the gate. It's all an evolution, even when you're huge. If that's the decision and that's the kind of firm you want to run, you want to grow it, you want to make it big, definitely just go for it. And a great place to do that is at a lot of these conferences that they have. And then there's a ton of online resources as well, where you can connect with other people who have done it. Most of the time, they're more than willing to share. There's a lot of leads and a lot of cases out there for everyone. And the overwhelming majority of attorneys are more than willing to help. And the second piece of that is if you ever want to get involved with a class action or a mass tort, whether that's an idea for a class action that you think that you have, that's something that you've seen a pattern of, something that you have questions about, we're always open to talking to you about that at LegaFi and Top Class Actions. And the other side of that is we're a fantastic lead generator that is all one-to-one opt-in, all real people, all real submissions that come to you, and you can get leads from us in class actions, mass torts, and in personal injury as well. Personal injury, we're actually growing across the country right now, especially in motor vehicle accidents. And so that's been a really interesting iteration, building that out and that experience.
That's awesome. I love it. Both great answers. If you're looking for more cases in those areas, go visit, Top Class Action on LegaFi. Reach out to Carson. Carson, I'll put your maybe LinkedIn profile in the show notes, or is there another place where people can contact you?
Yeah, that's perfect. LinkedIn is a great resource. You can also go to the Top Class Actions website and you can dial right in our sales line that goes straight to our sales team. So you should not get a voicemail in that experience, and that'll help you out and hopefully answer your question.
I'll put all that in the show notes for those listening. And I also love the point about just the mindset shift. I totally agree. It's funny when you were talking, I was thinking like some tactical answer. And then I just think of all the firms that I've talked to where there's like this mental barrier to growing past like two people. And it's really this just fear of letting go. And I think you're totally right. It's just a mental shift of like, all right, I'm going to make the decision to grow. Let me go and figure out the best way for me to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but I think the number one thing is just lighting that fire and getting ready to make it what you want it to be.
Yeah, totally. Carson, I really appreciate this. I think this will be super useful to folks in the space. Again, I'll leave your contact info, and thank you so much for having the conversation.
Yeah, Julian, thank you for having me. I had a great time talking, and don't be a stranger if you need anyone else to come back on.
Sounds good.